Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a neighbor, yeah.
Practice humility and asking.
Yeah, I still got pop.
I had a neighbor who every day, good morning, Edie. Good afternoon, Edie. I'm like, hi.
You?
I try to avoid it.
You?
Good to see you.
I haven't been driving it. I do everything in the morning early, and then before dark I'm in the house in my apartment.
It's
I don't
easier for
come
me to
out.
do office because I'm in that.
Yeah, but then you get caught like,
Visiting a
hi.
friend. I told
You
her,
know,
Yes,
I'm
bad.
looking over.
Sorry, I thought I dropped some.
I'm walking.
I understand that. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, we're having one of those mornings.
Light doesn't work, internet doesn't work.
It's time out.
Yeah, this morning I woke up and was like, does anyone consider daylight saving time as a curse on in the
Yes,
house?
I
I
do.
can't stand it.
I'm wishing for her.
It's like we hit it.
Yeah, Sunday will stop changing it altogether.
They keep talking about like making a law, and most people I know would love not to do it.
Yeah, I've never heard somebody go like, I just love privacy. It doesn't have anything up on
What I like is that one strip of Indiana that's just like, nope, I'm not doing it.
We lived there in South
I
Bend, and
lived
it was
there
so
too.
confusing.
Oh, did
It's like,
you?
okay,
Yeah.
so my family.
You don't, never
Right,
changed,
it's like right
and
now,
when
it's
I
everything.
left and you have to change.
Yeah, that's part of the
I was
reason I miss living in
what is
Arizona,
this?
because
Yeah.
it's just
I don't
Like-
never had to
We'll
deal
go
with
with
that at all. They
Cotswold
just
and all
don't care.
It's crazy.
This is
I wish we did.
I know after me having all these problems with getting the tech going and everything else, it's probably not the best time to announce, but we're looking for people to help set up.
You clearly need the help.
Oh, thank you. I do clearly need the help. Austin usually does it, but he sent me a note. He's fighting a cold right now and doesn't want to bring you down. And so, if you're interested in helping out, just let me know and we'll show you what to do. Let's see. March is a month with 5 Sundays. And whenever we have a month with 5 Sundays, the 5th Sunday is a Sangha social. So after meditation, instead of having the Dharma talk on the 29th, we will just have a social hour. So if you want to bring little snacks or something, feel free. As you know, we have plenty of tea. So as long as you like tea, there's plenty of that out there. And we'll just have a time to get to know each other and visit a little bit.
And not all out there, you know, we're going to set up in
Yeah, we don't have to cram into the gathering space. Today is our board meeting after practice. Anyone is welcome to stay. I can't promise excitement. We're generally a pretty agreeable board, so it's usually, yep, that sounds good. But if anybody wants to stay, feel free. We are looking for a replacement board member. Trey has been taking care of her mother who's in hospice, and on the good side, her mother is not getting any worse, but that means that she is taking care of her much longer than she expected to originally. So she is withdrawn from the board, and we're looking for somebody else to help out with outreach. If you're interested in that, please let me know.
We do have one outreach member.
Yeah, you wouldn't be
yeah.
just the Geneva also does outreach. Anything you can think of?
Amazingly enough, we do not have a comprehensive list of members, so that's something that I'm looking for. We have, Garrett has a list of people who regularly contribute because he's the treasurer, but for people who are at the first level with no specific monetary commitment, we don't have a list of those. So I was going to, but forgot to bring my notebook inside to get one. So I'll be bugging everybody for that. Or you could just shoot me an email or a text.
And actually, that brings
Also,
up-
because of the practice guide, is that what you're going to talk about?
well, no, I was going to talk about just a membership push, our normal spring membership push. We like to have people sign up for membership so that we have ways of communicating with you. There is a level, as Dee Dee mentioned, that requires no monthly contribution. It's called associate, but it still gives that communication capability easier, and also gives you free access when we have retreats. The retreats will be free for all members. So we are pushing that right now. You can sign up for membership on the website, cocpb.com. Up in the upper right-hand corner is a login, and if you are not signed up as a member yet, it'll say sign up.
If you're on a smart device and not a computer, you have to click on the same place, but it says members area. It doesn't
Yeah.
say login.
So that was about it. We are giving special thank you gifts this year for supporting and sustaining members. We're recreating the Buddhist Breviary, which is a collection of practices and sutras and gathas. We'll be giving an inscribed copy to all of the supporting and sustaining members. And I am making some special ceramic incense holders for the sustaining members, which is the highest membership level. So I think that's it. Okay. Do we have new people today? I think we have a couple. Yep. Okay. Our practice is called Zazen. Zazen is just sitting meditation. And that's exactly what it is. It's just sitting in the present moment. So it's not trying to control your thoughts or your breathing or anything else. It is simply sitting with the present as it is. As everyone who comes here regularly knows, my favorite description of Zazen is by Suzuki Roshi, a great teacher of Zen. He wrote a short poem where he said, "Open your front door and your back door. Let thoughts come and go. Just don't serve them tea." And that's exactly what Zazen is. So we'll start with the bell meditation, 25 rings of the bell. 21. Yep. I don't know why I keep saying that. I know I did.
Change it on me all of a sudden.
And does 21 have any special significance in Buddhism? No. I just pulled it out of the air and said we'll do 21. Actually, it's what they do at our St. Louis Center, and that was the mother center of pragmatic Buddhism, so we just continued it. So we'll do bell meditation to start, and then about 15 minutes of Zazen. Body, space, and mind in perfect harmony. I send my heart along with the sound of this bell. May all who listen to it be called to mindfulness and transcend anxiety and sorrow. morning service begins on page 2. May the fruit acquired by our practice extend to all living beings. We live in the universe connected to all beings. There are those who are in need of physical healing. May they receive the care and medicines for their healing. There are those who are in need of mental and emotional healing. May they receive the care and medicines for their healing. Among this community, we have the following intentions. May we hold these thoughts in our minds throughout the coming week. We are aware that our interconnection can extend through space and time, and we send our desire for protection to all. Like the Bodhisattva of compassion, we hear and respond to those in need. Today is International Women's Day, and in celebration of that, I would like us to chant the Enmejuko Kanangyo on page 10. Kanon is the name in Japan of the Bodhisattva also called Kuan Yin in China, who is the Bodhisattva of compassion. And normally this Gatha is chanted for compassion in times of healing or pain or disaster. But I thought it was also appropriate, since she is normally represented as female, to also chant it in honor of all those women in our lives, both those past, those here, and those yet to come. So we chant, when we do Japanese chanting, we chant on a single tone. So just find a tone that fits in and go for it. And we'll do 3 times through. Kanzeon Nanu Botsuyo Botsuyo Inyo Botsuyo En Uposoen Jorakuga Jotonen Kanzeon Oden Kanzeon En Chushin Kinen Churishin Kanzeon Namu Botsuyo Botsuyo Inyo Botsuyo En Uposoen Jorakuga Jotonen Kanzeon Oden Kanzeon En Chushin Kinen Furishin Kanzeon Namu Botsuyo Botsuyo Inyo Botsuyo En Uposoen Jorakuga Jotonen Kanzeon Oden Kanzeon En Chushin Kinen Furishin. May we awaken in each of us the Buddha's compassion and wisdom. With full awareness, we have chanted the Enmejuko Kanangyo for celebration. We dedicate the merit to the well-being, comfort, healing, and celebration of all the women in our lives. May they be deeply supported in the Dharma, peaceful and free from suffering, and may we together with all beings realize the Buddha way. For the Heart Sutra, we will do the translation number 2, alternate number 2, on page 7. All things are insubstantial and fleeting. My body is insubstantial and fleeting. My mind, my perceptions, my thoughts, my consciousness, all these are insubstantial and fleeting. This is the perfect wisdom. This is the release from suffering, to reside in perceptive emptiness, fixed on nothing, secure in nothing,
clinging to nothing, assuming nothing, believing nothing, expecting nothing, excluding nothing, fearing nothing, resisting nothing, isolated from nothing, independent of nothing, always moving forward with the ceaseless flow of the present. This is nirvana.
In this moment we are renewed, and we realize our unity with the universe and be at peace.
In this moment we are renewed. We realize our unity with the universe and are at peace.
Swaha.
Do you know about the time we were planning because the board meetings up?
You need to break in between here?
Yeah.
It's still a little long for people. So we'll take a break for 5 minutes just for stretching and fluid exchange, and come back to the Dharma talk.
What's up, man? Thanks for now.
Gift it before that.
Just in the bowl up front.
Hi there, I'm Glenn. I'm sorry? Christy. Christy, good to meet you. You came in and settled in so regularly, I didn't know you were new. I have missed a couple of Sundays, and so I wasn't sure that you'd been here. And I had. Well, it's good to meet you.
She's credit course. It's free. The only thing I would have to pay for is books. I had a relationship with him, master's. A couple years ago. 4 years. And it's like, I need a break. When I was first, I was probably not. So I just can't see current ones. Like I mostly just like
precisely balanced in how you said it.
You're good.
Yeah. The Wednesday people usually bring something. She was comparing real arguments to me. I'm already something.
So, one quick other announcement that I forgot, even though Dee prompted me on it. We are redoing the practice guide. We wanted to go through it and make sure the language was inclusive, completely inclusive. But we only had to change phraseology on one gatha, so I thought that we'd gotten it pretty good to begin with. But we decided as we were doing that to add some new sutras and gathas to the practice guide. When those come in, it'll probably be about a month or so, then we'll just put the old ones out on the library table, and if you'd like to take them home, feel free. So, I'm continuing my series, and with it being International Women's Day, it's a good time to continue this. But my series on the Therigatha, which are the verses of the elder nuns. It's a collection within the sutras of poems that were written by the original nuns following the Buddha. And some of these women are friggin' hilarious. They've got a really good sense of humor. I think the woman that I'm reading today really does. But I'll read the poem, and then we'll have a minute or two of meditation on it, so that you can kind of frame what it says to you. And I'll tell you what it says to me, and you can tell me how wrong I am. That's what poetry's all about, after all. So this one is, they're each titled, they actually don't have a title, but they're headed by the name of the person who wrote it. This one is titled Abaya's Mother. I once spent a week in bed with a bad fever. My little body stank from head to foot. Of course, I never noticed the smell until after my fever had broken. Not that this little story necessarily has anything to do with you. So this is one of my absolute favorites in the collection. It's got some humor to it. I love the way she ends it. Not that this little story has anything to do with you. Saying immediately, hey, I'm telling you this is about all of you, not just me. So I kind of think of my grandmother, who always used that kind of passive aggression. My mother loved to tell the story when the first time my father came home to visit my mother's parents. He was from California. Her parents were rural North Carolina. And my grandmother kept saying, Bob, would you like some peas? And he would go, nope. Well, he'd go, no thank you. It's being the 40s. No thank you. A minute or two later, she'd go, Bob, are you sure you don't want some peas? No, thank you. I'm full. It was wonderful. My mother finally kicked him and said, she means pass her the peas. Because that's what we did in the South. You never said, could you pass the peas? I want some peas. Would you like some peas? No, but would you? And you passed them on. So when I read this, I was like, oh, my grandmother could have written this so easily. But I love that the way she phrases it. I mean, if we heard this just out in the world, it would be like, well, that's interesting, but what does it have to do with anything? But remember, it's included in the sutras. So the people compiling the sutras felt that this had something to say. And I do too. So what does it have to say? Of course, I never noticed the smell until after my fever had broken. If we put that in the context of the Dharma is about realizing our dissatisfaction and our suffering and working for its cessation. But oftentimes, we don't realize the ways that we are suffering, the ways that we are dissatisfied, until we begin to advance in the practice of it bringing about its cessation. I think that's why so many people in the West especially hear the First Noble Truth that life is full of suffering and think, God, what a depressing religion. My life's not full of suffering, I'm happy. Are you really? Or are you putting on a mask? Are you masking the smell with things that make you happy for a while and then go away? With people that mask the smell for a while and then go away? But as you begin your practice, you begin to realize, oh wow, yeah, I never have really been at peace. I also like, she doesn't say, I never noticed the smell until after I was fully cured. I never noticed the smell until my fever had broken, after she had begun the healing process. We can begin seeing the ways that we're bringing about our own suffering and dissatisfaction very early on in the practice. But that doesn't mean we're done. It means we're just starting out. Our fever has broken, but now we have to continue the healing. Anyway, that's what I get from it. I have to say the other reason I thought of my grandmother is this is introduced as an older woman already. Whenever it introduces the title as so-and-so's mother, it means that both she and her daughter are members of the Sangha, are nuns. So this was a grandmother, we can assume. Yep, very much. Passive-aggressive grandmothers are everywhere.
I think it's funny you say that because I can appreciate the humor, but at the same time, it drives me crazy when people don't just say what they mean.
Yeah, I have a friend who, like me, is very literal, and I used to go on social media and post like little sayings and stuff, and she would say, "This doesn't make any sense," or some other form of just spit it out. And I never really had a good comeback or a response to that until way far into my practice. And of course the response is, if I tell you what it means, I'm only telling you what it means to me, not what it means to you. But what I heard is kind of a version of what you heard, which is that, we make, my problem is like interpersonal mistakes, and someone was trying to tell me something and I was just, went over my head, or someone was reaching out and I maybe didn't respond skillfully, or when I was younger I was extraordinarily selfish. And you don't really realize those things until it's hindsight. And one of our founder, Ryugen Sensei, has pressed upon us this practice of rigorous self-honesty, which it took me quite a while to learn does not mean rigorous self-beating up. So it's a tough balance between recognizing when we stink and saying, okay, that was not done correctly. I could have done that better. Are there amends that I can make? Yes or no? Act accordingly, and how to move forward. That is exceptionally difficult, especially when you're like a pleaser or someone with anxiety or something of that nature. So the fact that we don't learn the lesson until later is incredibly frustrating for me. And I think it's important not to get stuck in the blame, because when we're stuck there, we can't change it or fix it or move forward.
Kind of reminds me of what I was just thinking yesterday about the first start and the second start.
Mm-hmm.
First start of suffering, where something happens and having some pain or angst or having over it, and then that's the first start. And then the second start is when you start to layer on top of that, like all this meaning and all this, like you make it like much more suffering than it really needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're in it like that, you can't see clearly, like, oh wait, let's just back up and kind of look at this wisely. So like when you're in it, when you're in the stink, you've got that second thought going. As opposed to just the first start of have experienced some sort of suffering and just looking at it and see what it's about, and, instead of just adding like all this meaning on top of it, which makes it even more
Reacting, not responding.
yes.
The thing that I liked, Kathy, on that was that, about the analogy was the sense that, you're suffering by being sick, but you may not realize ways in which you are unpleasant to other people around you. Right? I didn't know that smelled bad. But anybody around you might have, that's a way in which you're unpleasant to be around.
Right.
And you may not realize that that's just a side effect of your suffering.
Right.
That's a good one too. I love that.
Yeah, for me, that one's actually kind of a contributor, because I've dealt with depression for many years, and the way you interpreted it was actually very personal and meaningful to me, because I live in this kind of like constant black fog, and there's really no sense of like why this is happening. And what he was just describing about how you become like unpleasant to other people, that's one of those things that I am very aware of, is that like I know I'm depressed, I know I'm in a really terrible mood, and I don't want that to bleed onto other people. And so I shame myself, and I try to isolate myself from other people, because I don't want to put them down just because I'm in a bad mood, because that would make me feel like a worse person. But then that also contributes to the suffering that I present, external support in that way.
Yeah, that goes with what Christy
And
was
that's
saying about the
why-
second dart.
Yeah, and that's like one of the reasons I come here is for kind of that context and support. But also the thought of like waking up to how am I causing my own, like asking the question of like how am I causing my own suffering, and that being like the starting the healing process. I had never really thought of that. Very helpful.
That really resonates with me. I suffer from panic attacks. And it used to really get on top of me. I get really wrapped up in the bodily sensations of panic and racing heart.
I've had a couple of those.
And you just kind of get stuck in that place. And my practice has really helped me to be able to say, oh, there's my brain doing that thing again.
Yeah, I've experienced a couple of those severe panic attacks myself. Thankfully only a couple of times, but I know exactly how it feels, where it just like, it takes you over. It's controlling you. At that point, it's a physiological reaction. It's like, I cannot get my heart to slow down. I cannot stop
It's really
dreading
It's really
what's
scary.
about to happen.
But even for people who don't have panic disorder or, anxiety or anything, you can be completely overrun by emotion. It doesn't have to be just physical illness or mental illness. Just being a person can cause a lot of just normal people feelings that you clutch onto and invent stories about and make a part of yourself, and so much of that is unnecessary. My son has been ill recently, so listening to the poem, I saw it from the perspective of a caregiver, because that's just where my brain is right now. And the idea of kind of coming through that fog and being able to participate in the experience that the people around you have been experiencing. Because for any existence there is an other. And the people, presumably nuns, who have been caring for this individual while she was ill, they knew about this thing. And so when she came through the fog, it's not just having a self-realization, but being able to also, empathize with the experiences of the people around you.
Oh, that's really good. I haven't thought of that part of it. Yeah.
And I've got another.
Okay.
I was a literature major.
No.
Been here in a while. So the last stanza had the word necessarily in it, and that was, it's not just passive aggression. It's saying it's up to you whether to take this story on board or not. It's not necessarily about you.
Yeah.
I'm putting it out there, and you can pick up that ball and run with it. I like the necessarily in there. I thought it was very cool.
The translations I'm using are actually a brand new translation. Came out just 2 weeks ago, about a month ago, in a book called The First Free Women. Excellent book. I highly recommend it. We have a copy for the library, but it's already checked out. So
I got it on Amazon for the ebook for like 11, 12 bucks.
yeah. So I very highly recommend it. And the title comes from the fact that this is the first women's literature that we have. This was 2,600 years ago. And these women writing it were among the first in a patriarchal society to share in exactly the same status as the men, although that wasn't true either, because they got other crap piled on top of them. There are more rules for the nuns than there are for the monks, and the nuns got blamed when the monks broke their celibacy vows and all these other things. But at least theoretically, they shared the same status.
They got the same teaching as the
They got the same teaching as the monks. Yeah.
What she was saying about from the point of the caregiver, an example I always use of what I'm trying to say is, you know how when you're helping a friend or someone and they cry and they always say, "I'm so sorry, I'm sorry." So as the crier, you're embarrassed. As the one caring for the person who's upset, you never get upset with someone for crying, right? You don't think they should be embarrassed or ashamed or whatever. Everybody feels terrible sometimes and needs to cry. And it's what struck me, and I hadn't thought of it from that perspective until you said that, was when someone is suffering and we're compassionate enough to recognize their suffering, sometimes they act in unskillful ways. They might be angry or push you away or say awful things or whatever. But as someone who's compassionate, you can think the only reason that they're acting this way is because they are suffering. Now, of course, that doesn't take into account like abuse situations and that kind of thing. But there's the whole story about if you come upon a dog and the dog tries to bite you and you're angry and you blame the dog, but if you see that his leg is caught in a trap, then instantly your perspective changes and you understand that he only tried to bite you because he's in pain and afraid. So I'm looking at that from a point of like grace and forgiveness of times in the past when I've been really crappy to people. I'm hoping that once or twice they were like, she's acting that way because she just doesn't know, or she doesn't realize how she sounds, or she doesn't have the maturity to realize X, Y, or Z. So we're always harder on ourselves than other people are on us. Always. Unless those people are just jerks. And I think that's something that when you first learn the lesson, like Skylar was saying, and you begin to try to look at it skillfully and try to make changes to understand that sometimes we just act out of ignorance, and try to offer yourself the grace that you offer other people.
So more literal interpretation, I'm Natalie. When my depression is really bad, I won't shower for several days. And at that time I'm not in the mindset of healing or helping myself. And I'm sure I stink to high heavens. And then once I do take a shower, I'm in a better mindset to work on myself and to heal from that.
I think that's pretty cool.
For me, it reminded me of the recovery process. When you're in active addiction, you rationalize a lot of your behaviors and you rationalize a lot of the suffering that you cause yourself through the addiction. And then when you start recovery, it's like that veil is lifted and you're like, it's just the complete insanity of what you're doing to yourself and what you're doing to other people. And that's kind of the lens that I saw it.
I think it's interesting, and I know this is something I need to work on. As I've started and become aware of the way I, make myself miserable sometimes and don't have to. And then I'll see other people doing it, and I'll just want to like shake them and be like, "Don't you understand?" And I have to let them come to their own realization and figure out, like maybe I can influence, but I can't just impart, like a lightning bolt. Don't you know you just need to do this? And you'll sound crazy if you say it out loud, and they won't be in the place to hear it. But I find myself like frustrating myself when I see that sometimes.
That's really common. I think especially for Western Buddhists, because this is kind of an introduced philosophy to us. It's not one that we grew up with. And when we find it helping us and making a difference in our lives, and then we see other people doing the same thing that we were doing prior to beginning the practice, you want to go, part of you wants to go, I have this great way, you need to try this, you really need to try this. And the other part is going, God, they're so frustrated, why can't they see the way to do it? It's so simple, all they have to do. It is very common, and I think it's that phase that we go through before we come out the other side and say, no, everybody has to find this for themselves. And that's repeated throughout the sutras. The Buddha constantly says, nobody can find the way to liberation for you. You have to do it for yourself.
Yeah, that's one of the constant lessons that I'm experiencing as a nurse, Is like even for like physical things, I can give you a drug that makes you feel better, but it's your body that does it. I can give you all the advice. Stop smoking. You'll revert. Your body will heal itself and reverse your smoking. No. But like, and anytime I see somebody, especially like people who smoke, it's like, just stop doing that. But it's not that. Just stop doing that. But it's not that easy. It's a chemical dependence that they have, and it's their responsibility to take charge of their health. Like, especially for, like, if you can offer all the advice you want, a lot of it is not welcome because the person's not in that mindset of accepting, because they just want to keep doing what they're doing because it makes them comfortable, even though it's causing them suffering. But ultimately, it is the responsibility of that person to wake up and say, wow, I'm probably doing the wrong thing. I should get some help. And that, again, that's just something that I'm constantly experiencing with my patients and with other people as well. It's always their responsibility to take your advice or to take a drug or.
Well, kind of ripping off that and going back a little bit Dee Dee said about self-forgiveness. We don't really have any control over, if we get the flu, there are symptoms. You will get a fever. It's kind of unavoidable. Just as so much of the human experience is unavoidable. Let your thoughts come and go. You will have what we say to my 6-year-old, having strong feelings. You will, that kind of thing will happen. And rather than turning away from that suffering, it's a normal part of the human experience, whether it's physical illness or mental illness or some spin cycle you get yourself in. Turning away from it doesn't solve the problem. If you want to get through the flu, you have to get through the fever. So turning toward that experience and observing it and accepting it as part of what it means to be a person with a body, I think is a valuable lesson.
If you're going through hell, keep going.
I'm going to drop a little Zen and remind everybody, all the talk has been about negative emotions and that side of the coin. You have to remember that there aren't two sides of the coin, there's only one, and that is clinging to emotion. And that includes positive as well. We do the same thing with very positive feelings. We cling to it and we want it to stay. And remember, when the Buddha is talking about the reasons for our suffering, one of them is that we experience something that does make us happy and we cling to it, and in clinging to it we destroy the happiness that we got from it. So it's not just in negative emotions and negative connotations that we cause ourselves suffering. It's also in clinging to positive and wanting that to continue. No, I'm in love with this person. They're going to stay in my life forever if it kills them or me. And we all do that. And I think in many ways we do it more with the positive emotions because it does make us feel good momentarily. And there's nothing wrong with accepting the joy that those feelings bring. Just as there's nothing wrong with accepting, as a matter of fact, not only is there nothing wrong, we should accept those times when we are depressed or angry or sad or whatever else. Experience those emotions, but don't cling to them. Don't offer them tea. Don't say, settle down, move in. I'll get the U-Haul. For my lesbian friends. The old joke in the LGBT community is, what's the second date for lesbians? They're renting a U-Haul.
Hey, we lived in 2 weeks after we met each
I
other.
was buying a dining room table.
There's some truth in every stereotype.
The way I see that is kind of like as an analogy, like I want to go to Cold Stone Creamery and I want to try all the different flavors of ice cream, not just the one like mint chocolate chip that I love, that I know that I love, and I'm only going to eat that version. I want to try like Rocky Road. I want to try this weird cotton candy flavor, this unicorn fart flavor. But then sometimes, I'm not in the mood for ice cream. I want a really strong cup of coffee. That's a completely different flavor. Or I want a nice curry dish. That's a completely different flavor profile. And I kind of think of emotions in the same way. Like sometimes, honestly, it feels good to feel angry. It feels very satisfying to feel angry sometimes. Not all the time. I don't want to stay angry all the time, obviously. But sometimes it feels satisfying to share your sadness with another person, or a laugh with another person. You don't need to stay in any sort of emotional state permanently. Like for me personally, I like to sample everything and avoid clinging in that way, because I know that the clinging is what causes the suffering.
Anybody else who hasn't spoken want to? Yes.
I love the image of the nun and her daughter both being nuns. They're both caregivers. And as you were reading, I was thinking the two safe people in my life were my grandmother and is my mother. And of course, my grandmother feels still with me, and my mother is still with me.
Well, thank you all. Great thoughts. Don't you love how a little 3-verse poem can bring up all these things?
If it had been longer, there would be less.
And many times, yeah. That's why haikus can engender so much conversation. We'll finish up with the Bodhisattva vow on page 4. Creations are numberless, I will strive to create them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I will strive to transform them. Reality is boundless, I will strive to perceive it. The awakened way is unsurpassable, I will strive to embody it. May your thoughts, words, and actions be corrective and encompassing of the pragmatic Buddhist path. May you approach this day with deference and dignity, and may you spread your personal peace to all those you encounter.
May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings not be separated from sorrow as bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. Saha.
Thank you all, and have a good week.
And remember, you're welcome to stay for the board meeting if you like.
Or just for social time. I don't think you have to get out of here.
Please, good question. So, I was going over my,
I've had friends make jokes about,
all the students.
Okay. When people do.
Yeah.
As long as it's not ill. Absolutely. I can laugh at